You're telling me these humans label their own planet as extremely dangerous? First Science Officer Kazarn clicked his mandibles in disbelief, compound eyes fixed on the holographic display. That's rather presumptuous of them, isn't it? Captain Velthora straightened her crystalline spines, a sign of mild irritation among the Axiom species. Presumptuous or not, it's right there in their standardized planetary classification database. They submitted it themselves when they joined the Galactic Council. But surely the Council didn't accept such an outrageous self-classification, Kazarn chittered. I mean, look at them. Soft, squishy endoskeletons, barely any natural defenses, and their atmosphere is primarily nitrogen and oxygen. How dangerous could they possibly be? The captain's spines flickered with an iridescent warning pattern. The Council not only accepted it, they upgraded the classification to extreme danger, approach with utmost caution after their first contact delegation visited Earth. That's unusual. Kazarn's antennae twitched. What happened during the delegation? The records are classified. Velthora's crystalline form shifted uncomfortably. But I heard rumors that it involved something called a chocolate habanero eating contest, and 3 council members having to be evacuated for emergency medical treatment. Biological weapons. Kazarn's mandibles clacked in alarm. No. The captain's spines dimmed slightly. Apparently it was just food. Regular human food. You can't be serious. I am. And that's not even the strangest part. Velthora brought up another holographic display. Look at their warning labels for their own species' consumables and activities. Everything from their beverages to their recreational pursuits seems to come with extensive cautionary notices. Kazarn studied the rotating display of human warning labels with growing confusion. Do not attempt to outrun avalanche. Warning, coffee hot. Do not use hairdryer while sleeping. Do not iron clothes while wearing them. Why would they need to specify such obvious things? Because Velthora's crystalline form pulsed with a mix of amusement and concern. Apparently some of them tried. That's impossible. No sentient species would. They have extensive medical records to prove it. The captain's spines flickered in a pattern indicating resignation. Along with something called YouTube compilations. Kazarn fell silent for a moment, processing this information. So they're dangerous because they're reckless? Not exactly. Velthora brought up yet another holographic display, this one showing human achievement records. They're dangerous because they take things that should be clearly, obviously lethal, and somehow survive them through a combination of innovation, determination, and what they call holding my beer and watching this. The science officer's compound eyes widened as he scrolled through the display. They've survived atmospheric re-entry in damaged vessels, crossed oceans in primitive wooden craft, climbed their highest mountains without breathing apparatus, deliberately jumped from high altitude with nothing but fabric to slow their descent? Indeed. The captain's spines pulsed with a pattern that indicated both respect and concern. And those are just their recreational activities. Wait until you see what they do for scientific research. There's more. They deliberately infected themselves with dangerous pathogens to prove germ theory. They tested radiation effects by standing next to nuclear devices. They created new elements just to see what would happen. And their space program. Velthora's crystalline form shimmered with what could only be described as a shudder. Let's just say their early methods of achieving orbit would be classified as suicide missions by any other species. Kazarn's antennae drooped. But why? Why take such risks? According to their historical records, the most common reason given is because it's there. The captain's spines rippled with a complex pattern of bemusement, though hold my beer and for science are close seconds. That's not a reason. That's barely even a justification. Welcome to dealing with humans. Velthora's form pulsed with what passed for a sigh among her species. The truly terrifying part isn't that they do these things, it's that they succeed often enough to keep trying. Surely they must have some sense of self-preservation? Kazarn's mandibles clicked rapidly, a sign of increasing distress. Oh, they do. That's why they have all those warning labels. The captain brought up yet another display. The problem is, they seem to treat them more as challenges than actual warnings. Look at this historical record from their early digital age. Someone labeled a small adhesive with, "Do not eat," and humans immediately started a trend of consuming them. They ate toxic adhesives? No, the adhesives weren't toxic. They were just unpleasant and not meant for consumption. The humans ate them anyway, recorded themselves doing it, and shared the recordings with others who then repeated the process. Kazarn's entire exoskeleton seemed to pale. That's exactly why they're classified as extremely dangerous, Velthora finished. They don't just survive seemingly impossible things. They actively seek them out, document them, and encourage others to try them. But surely their governing authorities try to prevent such behavior. The captain's crystalline form flickered with what might have been laughter. Their authorities usually end up having to issue even more specific warnings, which are then treated as new challenges. It's an endless cycle. This is absurd. Kazarn's antennae were practically tied in knots. How has their species survived? That's the most terrifying part. Velthora's spines pulsed with a complex pattern of awe and fear. They don't just survive. They thrive. Every near-death experience seems to teach them new things, which they then use to push even further limits. They've turned their own recklessness into a form of accelerated evolution. Evolution through repeated near-extinction events. That's not how it's supposed to work. Try telling them that. The captain's form shimmered with resignation. They'll probably try to prove you wrong through increasingly dangerous experiments. Just then, the ship's communication system crackled to life. A human voice, somehow managing to sound both professional and amused, came through. Galactic vessel, this is Earth Space Control. We couldn't help but notice you've been stationary in our orbit for quite some time. Would you like a closer tour? We've got some excellent extreme sports facilities you might want to check out. Kazarn's mandibles clicked in horror. They're monitoring us? Of course they are. Velthora's spines flickered with a pattern indicating both respect and caution. They may seem reckless, but they're not stupid. They've probably got contingency plans for everything from peaceful contact to full-scale invasion. And the extreme sports invitation? That's probably their idea of being diplomatic. The captain's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been a shrug. They're offering to show us firsthand why their planet is classified as extremely dangerous. The human voice crackled through again. We've got base jumping, volcano boarding, free diving, and something new we're calling zero-G paintball. Don't worry, we've got excellent medical facilities. Kazarn's antennae drooped even further. Captain, please tell me we're not... Earth Space Control. This is Captain Velthora, she responded, her spines glowing with a pattern that suggested both resignation and curiosity. We would be honored to accept your invitation, though perhaps we could start with something less... extreme? Oh, sure! The human's voice brightened. How about we begin with a nice, relaxing game of rugby? It's practically gentle compared to our other sports. Later that day, as Kazarn watched in horror as humans deliberately collided with each other at high speeds in what they called a friendly game, he finally understood why Earth's warning label was so severe. It wasn't because humans were particularly dangerous to others, though they certainly could be. It was because any species capable of turning their own potential extinction into an extreme sport was clearly not to be underestimated. And somewhere in the Galactic Council's headquarters, a clerk was already preparing to upgrade Earth's classification yet again. The new category? Extreme danger. Approach only if you're willing to join in. Because that, as it turned out, was the most dangerous thing about humans. Their ability to make their seemingly suicidal endeavors look so entertaining that other species wanted to try them too. Kazarn made a mental note to update his will before the scheduled, casual introduction to surfing tomorrow. He had a feeling he was going to need it. I believe I now understand the meaning of your phrase, wipe out, Kazarn muttered, sprawled on the beach while his exoskeleton attempted to shed what felt like several kilos of salt water and sand, though I'm still unclear on why it's considered enjoyable. Sarah Chen, their assigned human liaison, grinned as she propped her surfboard in the sand. But you caught that last wave perfectly. Well, right up until the point where you know. She made a tumbling motion with her hand. Experienced rapid unplanned rotation in multiple axes simultaneously? Kazarn's mandibles clicked in what might have been embarrassment. That's a very scientific way of saying wiped out spectacularly, Sarah laughed. But hey, you're already doing better than the Centaurian delegation. They refused to even touch the water after learning about sharks. Captain Velthora, her crystalline form refracting the afternoon sunlight in dazzling patterns, turned her attention from a datapad she'd been studying. Speaking of which, why exactly do you humans continue to enter an environment containing predators that could easily consume you? Oh, sharks aren't that bad, Sarah waved dismissively. They're actually pretty chill most of the time. Besides, We've got these electronic deterrent devices now that keep them away. Usually. Usually? Kazarn's antennae twitched violently. Well, sometimes they get curious anyway. But that's part of the fun. Nothing gets your adrenaline pumping quite like a close encounter with a great white. Velthora's spines flickered in what was becoming a familiar pattern of bemused concern. You consider near-death experiences fun? Not all of them, Sarah explained, pulling out a water bottle from her beach bag. Just the ones where we have a reasonable chance of survival, like 70-30 odds at minimum. 70-30? Kazarn's mandibles clicked rapidly. You consider a 30% chance of death reasonable? For extreme sports, those are pretty good odds. Sarah took a long drink. You should see some of our early space mission calculations. Now those were some sketchy probability matrices. I've been meaning to ask about that, Velthora interjected, her crystalline form pulsing with academic curiosity. Our historical records show that your species achieved spaceflight with computational power less sophisticated than what we now use in children's toys. How did you manage the calculations? Oh, that's a fun story. Sarah's eyes lit up. Ever heard of human computers? Of course we have, Kazarn replied. Though I fail to see how your primitive electronic devices... No, Sarah laughed. I mean actual humans doing the computing. We had rooms full of people, mostly women actually, doing complex orbital calculations by hand, with pencils and paper. There was a moment of silence broken only by the sound of waves. You... Kazarn's antennae drooped in disbelief. You calculated orbital trajectories? Manually? Yep, Sarah beamed. Katherine Johnson was particularly amazing at it. She did the calculations for the Apollo 11 moon landing, by hand, while dealing with 1960s workplace discrimination, I might add. But the margin for error? Velthora's entire crystalline form seemed to shudder. Was pretty significant, yeah, Sarah nodded. Which is why we also had this saying, the right stuff. It meant you had to be just the right combination of brilliant, brave, and maybe a little bit crazy to be an astronaut back then. A little bit crazy seems to be a recurring theme with your species, Kazarn observed dryly. Says the alien who just tried to surf for the first time and is already asking about big wave conditions. Sarah winked. Speaking of which, want to try something really fun? Both aliens noticed she was eyeing what appeared to be a large, colorful fabric bundle in her beach bag. What is that? Velthora asked, her spines rippling with both curiosity and apprehension. Just a little something we call parasailing, Sarah grinned. Don't worry, the parachute's rated for twice your weight class, Captain, and Kazarn's exoskeleton should provide excellent protection in case of a water landing. Water landing? Kazarn's mandibles clicked nervously. Oh yeah, they happen sometimes. But that's why we have the safety boat, which, by the way, is captained by my friend Mike. He's only dropped 3 people this season. Dropped? Both aliens spoke simultaneously. Just kidding, Sarah laughed. He hasn't dropped anyone, this month. Now who wants to go first? Before either alien could respond, their communication devices buzzed simultaneously. Kazarn's antennae perked up as he read the message. Captain, we're receiving a priority communication from the Galactic Council, he reported, trying not to sound too relieved at the interruption. Velthora's form shifted to a more formal configuration as she accessed the message. Her spine suddenly flared in surprise. Is something wrong? Sarah asked, noting the captain's reaction. Not wrong exactly, Velthora replied slowly. The Council is requesting our participation in a detailed study of human recreational activities. Apparently, several member species have expressed interest in establishing what they're calling extreme sport cultural exchange programs. Oh, awesome! Sarah's face lit up. I've got so many ideas. Have you guys ever heard of bungee jumping? Or whitewater rafting? Oh, we could start with something simple, like ziplining through the Amazon rainforest. Kazarn's entire exoskeleton seemed to pale. Captain, surely we're not going to... The Council has already approved the preliminary program, Velthora interrupted, her spines pulsing with what might have been resignation. They're calling it the Human Adventure Sports Integration Initiative. That's a bit formal, Sarah mused. We should call it something catchier. How about Galaxy Gone Wild, Extreme Edition? The Council also notes, Velthora continued, ignoring Kazarn's increasingly distressed mandible clicking, that this program is considered vital for improving interspecies relations and understanding human psychology. Understanding our psychology? Sarah raised an eyebrow. They could just ask. We did, Kazarn reminded her. Your species' most common explanation for dangerous activities remains, hold my beer and watch this. Fair point, Sarah conceded. Though personally, I'm more of a here's a terrible idea, let's do it kind of girl. The Council has also updated Earth's classification again, Velthora added, her spines flickering with what might have been amusement. Oh? Sarah leaned forward, interested. What are we now? Extreme danger. Warning. Humans will convince you their ridiculous ideas are fun. Kazarn read aloud. Approach only with strongly developed sense of self-preservation. Sarah burst out laughing. That's it? Wait until they hear about our new zero-gravity obstacle course. We're calling it space parkour. Kazarn's antennae drooped so low they nearly touched the sand. Captain, I believe I need to submit my resignation. Denied. Velthora's form pulsed with what was definitely amusement now. The Council specifically requested you as the lead scientific observer for the program. They were quite impressed with your surfing attempt. But I failed! Exactly, Sarah grinned. You failed spectacularly, got right back up, and immediately asked about larger waves. You're practically honorary human already. As Kazarn's mandibles clicked in what sounded suspiciously like a whimper, Sarah was already pulling out her phone. Now about that parasailing. And somewhere in the Galactic Council's headquarters, a clerk was updating Earth's file yet again, adding a new warning. Caution. Human enthusiasm for dangerous activities is highly contagious. Survival training recommended before contact. They considered adding, "May the forces of physics be with you," as a subtitle, but decided that might encourage humans to try breaking those next. After all, the last thing the galaxy needed was humans treating the fundamental laws of reality as extreme sport challenges. Though knowing humans, they probably already were. Distinguished members of the Galactic Council, Kazarn began, his mandibles clicking nervously as he addressed the assembled representatives. I present my preliminary findings regarding human recreational activities and their implications for interspecies cultural exchange. The Council chamber's holographic displays activated, showing various images of humans engaging in what most species would consider survival situations. Kazarn noticed several Council members' appendages twitching involuntarily at the footage. As you can see, he continued, humans have developed an extensive catalog of activities that deliberately court what they term calculated risk. These range from relatively modest endeavors such as rock climbing to more extreme pursuits such as wingsuit proximity flying. Clarification requested, interrupted the hive mind representative, their crystalline form flickering with confusion. Are we to understand that humans intentionally don specialized suits to fly extremely close to planetary surfaces at high velocities? Correct, Kazarn confirmed. And they record these experiences for entertainment purposes. A murmur rippled through the chamber. The Aquarian delegate raised a fluid tentacle. Query: what is the survival rate for such activities? According to human statistics, Kazarn pulled up a new display. Wingsuit proximity flying has a fatality rate of approximately 1 in every 60 practitioners. The chamber erupted in shocked exclamations. Order! The Council President's voice resonated through the chamber. Science Officer Kazarn, are you suggesting humans continue this activity despite such mortality rates? Not only do they continue it, Kazarn's antennae drooped slightly. They actively work to make it more challenging. Our human liaison, Sarah Chen, informed me they're currently developing something called wingsuit cave diving. Surely that's a translation error. The mechanoid representative's optical sensors whirred in disbelief. I'm afraid not. Captain Velthora stepped forward, her crystalline form pulsing with what had become her characteristic mix of resignation and admiration. They intend to combine aerial proximity flying with subterranean navigation and underwater operations, all in one continuous sequence. The chamber fell silent. Furthermore, Kazarn continued, bringing up new displays. This is merely one example of what humans call pushing the envelope. They appear to have an intrinsic drive to test the boundaries of what's possible, often without any clear practical benefit. Benefit analysis requested. The hive mind representative flickered urgently. That's complicated. Kazarn clicked his mandibles thoughtfully. When asked about the purpose of these activities, humans provide varying responses. Some cite personal growth, others mention the rush, and a disturbing number simply say because it would be awesome. Define awesome in this context, the Council President requested. According to our research, Velthora interjected, it appears to be a human term encompassing feelings of excitement, achievement, and what they call bragging rights, though it's often used interchangeably with other terms such as epic, sick, and totally rad. Are these indicators of mental illness? The medical administrator's tentacles writhed with concern. No, Kazarn sighed. They're expressions of enthusiasm. Humans appear to be most enthusiastic about activities that other species would consider grounds for psychiatric evaluation. The chamber's displays shifted to show footage from various extreme sports competitions. Several council members visibly recoiled at the sight of humans launching themselves off snow-covered mountains, riding waves the size of small buildings, and deliberately jumping out of perfectly functional aircraft. However, Kazarn continued, our most significant finding isn't the existence of these activities, but rather their impact on interspecies relations. New data streams appeared in the holographic display. Since the initiation of the Human Adventure Sports Integration Initiative, we've observed a 300% increase in cross-species recreational activities. Even more surprisingly, we're seeing evolutionary adaptations in participating species. Explain. The council president leaned forward, suddenly intense. The Erevan delegation, Kazarn brought up specific footage, has developed new dermal formations to better handle the wind resistance during skydiving. The Aquarians have modified their fluid dynamics to more efficiently catch waves. Even my own species has begun developing specialized exoskeletal configurations for various human sports. This is unprecedented. The medical administrator's tentacles twisted in complex patterns. You're suggesting that exposure to human recreational activities is driving rapid evolutionary adaptation in other species? Correct, Velthora confirmed. Though perhaps not in the way you might expect. These aren't purely physical adaptations. We're seeing fundamental shifts in risk assessment and problem-solving approaches across all participating species. In other words, Kazarn explained, we're not just learning to do dangerous things. We're learning to think like humans about dangerous things. Is this cause for concern? The council president's voice carried a note of worry. Actually, Velthora's form pulsed with an unexpected pattern of optimism. Our data suggests it's having a largely positive effect. Participating species show marked improvements in innovation, adaptability, and crisis response. They're also developing what humans call a can-do attitude. Though some might argue that's not entirely positive, Kazarn added, his antennae twitching. Last week, the mechanoid delegation decided to attempt something called a triple backflip during the Robot Olympics. They hadn't actually tested if it was possible first. Was it? The mechanoid representative's optical sensors brightened with interest. Eventually, Kazarn clicked. After several rather explosive attempts and what humans call epic fails, the footage has apparently gone viral on human social media networks. Which brings us to our final observation, Velthora continued. Humans don't just survive their seemingly suicidal endeavors. They celebrate both their successes and failures. They've turned potentially lethal activities into opportunities for learning, entertainment, and what they call social media content creation. And other species are beginning to emulate this behavior? The council president sought confirmation. Indeed, Kazarn brought up one final display. We're seeing the emergence of interstellar extreme sports competitions, cross-species adventure tourism, and something humans call fail compilation videos, featuring beings from across the galaxy. The implications are significant. Velthora's form pulsed thoughtfully. Humans aren't just sharing their dangerous activities with us. They're teaching us their unique approach to challenging the impossible. And how would you categorize this approach? The council president asked. Kazarn's mandibles clicked in what might have been amusement. Based on our observations, the human approach can be summarized as, the chances of success are low, the risks are high, and failure could be catastrophic. So obviously we have to try it. The chamber erupted in a mixture of alarmed exclamations and intrigued murmurs. Order! The council president called again. Given these findings, what are your recommendations? Velthora and Kazarn exchanged glances before the captain spoke. We recommend updating Earth's classification one final time. To what? Extreme danger, warning, exposure to humans, may result in increased risk-taking, evolutionary adaptation, and the inexplicable urge to document everything for posterity. Long-term effects may include development of a can-do attitude and decreased survival instinct. Proceed with caution, or don't. Humans have made that attitude contagious too. As the council chamber descended into heated debate about the implications of these findings, Kazarn received a message from Sarah. His antennae twitched as he read it. Captain. He clicked quietly. Sarah wants to know if we're interested in something called volcano boarding next week. Apparently, it's totally epic. Velthora's crystalline form pulsed with what had become a familiar pattern of resignation and anticipation. Tell her we'll be there. After all, we should thoroughly document these phenomena for scientific purposes. Of course, Kazarn agreed, his mandibles clicking in what was definitely amusement now, for science. And as the council debated the future of interspecies extreme sports, somewhere on Earth, a human was probably inventing an even more dangerous activity, complete with safety warnings that would be promptly ignored. Because that's what humans do. They push boundaries, break limits, and somehow convince everyone else that it's a good idea. The galaxy would never be the same, and most species were starting to think that might not be such a bad thing after all. The Galactic Council's Department of Xenological Studies was having what humans would call a moment. Specifically, they were reviewing the latest data from their Human Behavior Analysis Initiative, and the results were causing considerable institutional distress. These statistics cannot be correct, senior researcher Volkov stated, their gelatinous form rippling with disbelief. You're telling me that after we explicitly labeled certain human activities as absolutely forbidden due to extreme risk, participation in those activities increased by 427%? Kazarn, who had somehow become the Council's leading expert on human recreational behaviors, much to his continuing dismay, clicked his mandibles in confirmation. Furthermore, we've documented a new phenomenon where humans are actively seeking out activities specifically because they carry warning labels. But that defeats the entire purpose of warning labels. Velok's translucent body pulsed with frustrated bioluminescence. Actually, Captain Velthora interjected, her crystalline form glinting with what had become her characteristic mix of resignation and amusement. Humans have a term for this: reverse psychology. Though in this case it appears to be working in reverse of its intended reverse effect. That doesn't make any sense, Volkov protested. Welcome to human psychology, Sarah Chen grinned, entering the research chamber with a stack of data pads, where warning labels are treated as challenge notifications and "don't try this at home" is universally understood as "please try this at home and film it for social media." The human's recent appointment of Sarah as Chief Interspecies Adventure Coordinator had raised quite a few eyebrows, or equivalent sensory organs, among council members. The fact that she had arrived at her confirmation hearing via jetpack hadn't helped. We've compiled the latest data from the Human Adventure Sports Integration Initiative, Sarah continued, distributing the data pads. You might want to sit down for this part. Well, those of you who have the biological capability for sitting. Kazarn's antennae twitched nervously as he began reviewing the data. This shows that 17 previously non-spacefaring species have achieved orbital flight in the past standard year alone. All through what humans call extreme sports equipment modifications? Yep, Sarah beamed. Turns out a lot of our recreational gear can be repurposed for space exploration if you're creative enough. Did you know you can achieve escape velocity with enough rocket-powered skateboards? I mean, the success rate isn't great, but please tell me they at least conducted proper safety testing. Volok's gelatinous form shuddered. Oh, absolutely, Sarah nodded. We had multiple crash test dummies. Though after the first few actual attempts, several species volunteered to be live test subjects. The Adrenaline Appreciation Society is getting really popular in the outer colonies. The what? Velok's bioluminescence flickered in alarm. It's an interspecies extreme sports club, Velthora explained, her spines pulsing with what might have been pride. They're currently working on something called zero-gravity parkour between actively moving spacecraft. With safety equipment, of course, Sarah added quickly, noting Velok's increasingly distressed rippling. We've got these really cool new magnetic tether systems. They work about 60% of the time. 60%? Velok's entire form seemed to pale. That's actually pretty good for a first-generation system, Sarah defended. Besides, we've got rescue protocols in place. The solar windsurfing team is always on standby. The solar windsurfing team. Kazarn's mandibles clicked in what had become a Pavlovian response to human innovation. Oh right, that's a new one. Sarah pulled up a holographic display. So, we figured out you can modify traditional surfing techniques to ride solar particle waves. The boards are mostly experimental quantum field generators, but the principle is the same. Watch this footage from last week's competition. The assembled aliens watched in horror and fascination as beings from various species rode visible waves of plasma through the solar corona, performing what Sarah enthusiastically described as sick tricks and radical maneuvers. Is that a Vulcanoid doing a backflip through a solar flare? Kazarn's antennae were practically tied in knots. Yeah, Takar's really getting into it. Sarah nodded approvingly. Though you should see what the Crystalline Collective is doing with magnetic field manipulation. They've basically turned the entire asteroid belt into an extreme sports playground. This is unprecedented. Volok's form rippled with a complex mix of emotions. We're seeing evolutionary adaptations and technological innovations at rates that shouldn't be possible. That's because you're thinking about it wrong, Sarah explained, perching casually on a nearby console. You're approaching it from a traditional research and development perspective. We're approaching it from a hold my beer and watch this perspective. The difference being? Volok prompted. Traditional R&D asks, how can we make this safe enough to try? Sarah grinned. The human approach asks, how awesome would it be if this worked? And then figures out the safety protocols through what we call practical experimentation. You mean trial and error? Kazarn clicked. Exactly. Though we prefer to call it iterative testing through experiential learning. And the failures? Volok's bioluminescence pulsed questioningly. All documented for future reference. Sarah patted one of the data pads. We've got a whole new section in the Galactic Library called Ways This Could Go Wrong, and How to Make It Go Right Next Time. It's become surprisingly popular reading material. I noticed. Velthora's crystalline form shimmered with amusement. Though I'm somewhat concerned about the subsection titled Hold My Beverage, a multi-species guide to questionable decisions. That's actually our most peer-reviewed publication, Sarah beamed. Turns out nearly every spacefaring species has their own version of Hold My Beer. We're working on a universal translation guide. Speaking of questionable decisions, Kazarn interjected, his mandibles clicking nervously. The Council has requested an update on Project Impossible. Oh, you mean the faster-than-light skateboarding initiative? Sarah's eyes lit up. We're making great progress. We've almost figured out how to stabilize the quantum tunneling effect. We only lost 3 parallel universes in the last test run. Volok's form rippled in alarm. Lost 3 parallel universes? Don't worry, we're pretty sure they just merged with neighboring reality streams. Sarah waved dismissively. Besides, the quantum physicists say it's actually helping them develop new theories about multiversal stability. Something about extreme sports accidentally proving string theory. This is madness. Volok pulsed weakly. No, Velthora corrected, her spines glowing with what had definitely become pride. This is human-influenced scientific progress. Unconventional, certainly. Dangerous, absolutely. But you can't argue with the results. Speaking of results, Sarah checked her quantum-enabled smartwatch. We should probably wrap this up. The first Interstellar Wingsuit Racing Championship is about to start, and I promised the Hive Mind Collective I'd teach them about trash talking. Trash talking? Kazarn's antennae twitched. Yeah, they're really getting into sports psychology. Though we're still working on translating "your mother was a single-celled organism" into something that won't cause a diplomatic incident. As the meeting adjourned and various beings filed out, or oozed or floated or quantum-tunneled, Volok turned to Kazarn. Do you ever wonder if we made a mistake allowing humans into the galactic community? Kazarn watched as a group of previously risk-averse methodicals practiced something called parkour in the corridor, while a hive mind collective debated the optimal angle for a sick rail grind. No, he clicked thoughtfully. I think we made exactly the right mistake. Somewhere in the distance they heard Sarah's voice. Hey everyone, who wants to try antimatter surfing? Volok's bioluminescence flickered in resignation. The galaxy will never be the same, will it? No, Kazarn agreed, his mandibles clicking in what had definitely become a smile. It will be much more interesting. And as various species rushed off to attempt yet another impossibly dangerous human-inspired activity, the Galactic Council's warning system quietly updated itself one more time. Warning: exposure to human recreation may result in spontaneous evolution, technological innovation, and the inexplicable desire to attempt the impossible. Side effects include reduced fear response, increased problem-solving capability, and the ability to turn nearly anything into an extreme sport. Proceed with enthusiasm. Because at this point, that was really the only way to proceed at all. The end.